While I would rather the Panthers find a way to win the final 3 games, I was looking over at Tankathon.com earlier and thinking to myself, maybe it is better if they lose out and get into the top 2. I'll tell you why right here on the Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. Why? Because tomorrow is Wednesday, and on Wednesdays throughout the entirety of the regular season, answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. And also, this may be your second to last opportunity to ask me a question, the penultimate weekly Wednesday mailbag, as next Wednesday is, well, Christmas Day. And I'm not sure there's going to be an episode on Christmas Day, but once we get to the offseason, do not fret. The weekly Friday mailbag is here. So if you want to ask me a question this Wednesday or any Wednesday remaining, and in the offseason on Fridays, all you got to do is either at me or DM me. Of course, follow me on Twitter at Julian Council. Not required to get those weekly Wednesday, soon to be Friday mailbag questions in here on the Locked On Panthers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. The Panthers coming off of a disappointing 30-14 loss against the Dallas Cowboys at home on Sunday. They were favored for the first time I saw in 729 days. First time in 33 games. And, well, they proved Vegas wrong, unfortunately, but not important moving forward, as it's over. It's done with. It's just one game. It does not erase what Carolina did the previous 5 weeks. It is not really erase what Bryce Young has been able to do, as he had obviously a poor game, turned the ball over 4 times, the run defense. It is what it is at this point in time. Not a great run defense at all this season. So that's just going to be something that the Panthers have to deal with only 3 more weeks, as I believe they are officially eliminated from playoff contention here in 2024. But that's actually what I want to talk to you about today when looking at where the Panthers stand heading into 3 weeks left in the season, with Arizona at home on Sunday, at Tampa, then at Atlanta to close things out. And more specifically, where they sit right now in the NFL draft order. I know, here I am, Julian Council, who does not like talking about the draft in the middle of the season, talking about the draft here in the middle of the season. Now, basically the end of the season. As we know, the Panthers are not going to be in the playoffs. And as long as they're in playoff contention, I feel like my anti-talking the draft throughout the year stance should be allowed. But once they're completely out of it, which they are now, I think we can start looking ahead to what's going to come in April, understanding, though, that coaching carousel going to happen pretty soon here. We'll see who's going to be the DC, who's going to be on the staff next year with Dave Canales, who I expect will be back, although what we're about to talk about will certainly raise questions of whether that will actually happen if what happens, happens. You also have free agency. Got to figure out extensions for players like Jaycee Horn before you have the real draft season happen at the end of March and throughout the entirety of April. But speaking of the draft, Tankathon.com. I'm sure you guys have gone over there plenty of times throughout the years. So the Panthers are perennially in a top 10, unfortunately, of the NFL draft. And that has unfortunately not led to things changing here, as they are now embarking upon their 6th straight double-digit loss season. But right now, after 15 weeks having been played in the NFL season, not including the Monday night game that's happening after I'm recording the show, the Giants sit there atop the draft at 2-12. The Raiders are 2-11 at 2nd overall. Patriots at 3-11 at 3rd overall. The Jags 4th overall at 3-11. Panthers 5th overall at 3-11. Titans 6th overall at 3-11. Browns 7th overall at 3-11. My God, there were some terrible teams in the NFL this season. Like, what is this? You have 5 3-11 teams. You have right now, as of this recording, 6 11 loss teams. That is disgusting for professional football, but that's where we sit heading into week 16 with 3 more games left to go for the Panthers. And when you look at that draft order, obviously, I'm sure you're excited about the fact Carolina sits there at 5 with an opportunity to, I don't know, maybe address the defensive line with Mason Graham from Michigan, or to potentially go find an edge rusher like Abdul Carter from Penn State, or this, address offense and defense at the same time and draft the Heisman Trophy winner out of Colorado in Travis Hunter, who Dave Canales asked about on Monday. He just said that, yeah, it'd be a nice challenge. Would it be a challenge potentially for the Panthers later on? We will find out once we do get to April and find out all the things that they do in between now and then when that selection will be made on that Thursday evening. But when I look at this, I'm looking at the teams right there in front of Carolina. At 1 and at 2, the Giants and Raiders, 2 teams that coincidentally the Panthers were able to beat this season, are 2 teams that are going to be looking for a quarterback in the draft. In particular, Shedeur Sanders, also from Colorado, and Cam Ward from Miami. Those appear to be the top 2 selections. Jalen Milroe, who people were talking about being number 1 overall after the Georgia game, which is insane that anyone ever uttered that phrase, as he's not good. He may be going to the draft, but he's not getting drafted in the top 10. Quinn Ewers may actually be staying in college. Will it be at Texas? Will it be down the road in Chapel Hill? We'll find out. This is not a great draft class. Drew Aller from Penn State, he's staying. Not a great class of quarterbacks. And those 2 clearly are far and away the best 2 and will go 1 and 2, I think, if it stays like this, Giants and Raiders. But what if Carolina loses out? What if they're able to get the 3-14 and only improve upon the win total by 1 game from a year ago? 2-15 to 3-14 wouldn't be great for Dave Canales as far as the feelings among the ownership about what he can do, even though they have played well. And if they lose a close game against Arizona, close game against Tampa, close game against Atlanta, it's important how it looks, but still 3-14 is 3-14, and all the drama about the quarterbacks. And if Bryce Young continues to play well, he bounces back off of a bad performance, a career-high 4 turnovers against the Cowboys on Sunday, and he's able to play well against Arizona, play well against Tampa, play well against Atlanta, and show that he should get another opportunity in 2025, maybe the Panthers are in a position where they're right there at 1 or at 2. And if that's the case, the Patriots already have their quarterback in Drake May. The Jags have Trevor Lawrence. Tennessee needs a quarterback. Will Levis, the king of whoopsie daisies in the NFL this season, he's terrible. The Browns, I don't know what they're going to do. They could potentially get a quarterback. But if Carolina is situated there in the top 2, there will be a lot of noise. And I had this conversation with Nick Carboni of WCNC, the sports director over there, on Sunday night, after Sunday Night Football, the local NBC affiliate here in Charlotte. And he brought up to me, he's like, okay, Julian, well, you're bringing up a good point about potentially sitting there in the top 2 and trying to find your sucker. But isn't that just going to have a lot of talk about replacing Bryce? Possibly. I wouldn't discount it, knowing this fan base and just how things work anyways, about always being in constant pursuit of a quarterback, David Tepper, which is leading the Panthers to all the issues that they've had over the last couple of seasons. I understand that sentiment, but wouldn't you at this point in time, at 3-11, and I would rather talk about a team that finds a way to win out. Bryce plays well. Defense finds a way to get some stops. You see Coker continue to improve, have something to build on going to next year. I would rather see that. But we have seen, even when Bryce Young has played well over the last 6 weeks, the defense is terrible. There are still questions on the offensive line, like at left tackle of Ike Ekwonu. Receiver, they need more. Running back moving forward, Jonathan Brooks probably out for the entirety, if not the majority of next season. There's a lot of areas that need to be addressed, and taking one singular player in the top 5 is not going to change the franchise's fortunes next season and beyond, in my opinion, especially because it's probably not going to be a quarterback. And that is typically the position that makes or breaks you in the NFL, as we have all become keenly aware of here in Carolina over the last couple of seasons, since we watched Cam Newton's body decay and we watched Sam Darnold not work out, Teddy Bridgewater not work out, Baker Mayfield, and still TBD right now on Bryce Young. So if they're sitting there in the top 2 and the Giants or Raiders are behind them, don't you think they're going to be desperate to get up there in the top 2 and to do what Carolina did? Now, I understand Carolina went from 9-1, but we have already seen in the past the Bears going from 3-2, trading with San Francisco so they could get Mitch Trubisky, second overall. We have seen how much it costs to get a quarterback and how much it can hurt your franchise. Look at all the teams that traded all those assets for a quarterback, and look at the teams that received those assets and which of those teams is better off. Typically, it's a team that received all the assets. Look at Houston after trading away Deshaun Watson. Look at the Browns right now. Not great. Look at Seattle and Denver, where it's actually kind of worked out, where Denver moved on from Russell Wilson, and they're going to be in the playoffs this year. Seattle, they're fighting for their playoff lives, but they've been fine. But typically, when you give up the farm and your firstborn child for that quarterback, it does not bode well, especially if that guy does not end up being very good, which has been the problem for a lot of these teams recently. If they're in the top 2, they would be able to trade back, stay likely in that top 5, top 10 range, as the Browns at 7 would be a team interested. The Jets at 9 would be a team that's interested in a quarterback and one of those 2 guys. You don't think Shedeur wouldn't love to live in New York? You don't think Dion would allow that? Maybe not, because Woody Johnson's a terrible owner. But Carolina's sitting there in the top 2. That could be the best case scenario following the next 3 weeks. I, again, would prefer them to actually win games and come up here and talk about it. As I've been keeping a tally, the Panthers are 17-59 since I've been hosting this podcast. 59 losses. It weighs on the soul, y'all, especially when you got to talk about it every single day. But you know what? Being the top 2 with the offseason coming up, likely no coaching search. Never be surprised, but that could be a coaching search. Could give me something to talk about all of April and figure out whether the Panthers want to be able to control the top of the draft by sitting up there and finding their sucker like the Bears found their sucker in Carolina a couple of years ago. So just some food for thought heading into the last couple of weeks of the season. Dave Canales spoke to the media following the game on Sunday, or I guess on Monday, spoke to him after reviewing the film and had a couple things to say, especially about development versus wins and what matters in the last couple weeks of the season. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to say more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. And speaking of sports going on this week here in Charlotte tonight, it is the Jumpman Invitational, North Carolina playing. Heels definitely need to win, so go check out Game Time for that. Got part 2 of it tomorrow on Wednesday. Then on Sunday, the home finale for the Panthers against Arizona. Why not have that be your perfect holiday gift? Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can place a $5 bet and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And well, looking over at FanDuel, we knew it was coming even before the Panthers lost to the Cowboys. Panthers are back to being underdogs. This streak has been renewed. They are 4.5-point underdogs in the home finale against Arizona on Sunday. Plus 176 money line over-under is set right now at 46.5. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You would start $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Dave Canales caught up with the media on Monday after reviewing the film from the Panthers' 30-14 loss against the Dallas Cowboys. A disappointing loss, and one that he said was a step back, a regression from where the team had been the previous 5 weeks, where they beat the Saints. Bryce looked good in that win. They go to Munich, beat the Giants in overtime. Should have never gone to overtime, but doesn't matter. A win is a win. The Panthers are 2-0 internationally, so you'll take that. And also we'll take an international game every single week. I know Roger Goodell, not every week, but every year. I know Roger Goodell wants to one day have I don't even know if it's even logistically possible, but he wants to have one every single week. You're going to do that week 18 ahead of the playoffs. How does that work? Does it really? I guess you can play in Canada or Mexico. So actually that does make sense. Either way, so you get those 2 wins, get the bye week, come back, play close against Kansas City, then you lose a game that you shouldn't have lost against Tampa Bay. They lose a game that they also shouldn't have lost against Philadelphia. Those guys were not even happy to win. You had A.J. Brown complaining about the pass game after that. Now, I don't think he's complaining after what he and Devontae Smith were able to do at the Pittsburgh on Sunday, but those guys weren't even happy to beat you. They're mad because they didn't get theirs that afternoon. So the Panthers should have won those 2 games. It should have been 5-8 going to yesterday's game, and then would have been possibly still in the hunt, actually would have been in the hunt to potentially win the NFC South. Now, well, that's all over because they are on a 4-game losing streak, and that is less than ideal. But as just mentioned before in the previous segment, may be the best thing for the team. When asked again on Monday, Dave Canales, whether this was a setback for the team, he did say certainly with the football, with ball security, they took a step back. As looking at Bryce, the first game he came back and started, had the 2 picks. One of them, miscommunication, either on his end or Tommy's end, doesn't really matter. Ended up in an interception, underthrown ball to Jalen Coker. That gets picked off. After that, the pick, put that in air quotes, the pick that Legette allowed the Saints defender to take away from him, that's not on Bryce. He had 1 fumble that the offense was able to recover, so they avoided that. And then he had the interception a week ago in Philadelphia. But he hadn't really put the ball in harm's way. And that was one of the biggest things about the way he was playing. Wasn't just the confidence, wasn't just the leadership and all of the Bama Bryceness of it all. It was the not turning the football over. Well, he regressed there. The Panthers overall have regressed to that category as they had the fumbles, the drops, things that have cost them games the last couple of weeks. And then he brought up the things pre-snap offensively. 5 false starts. And this has been an issue for this team. I feel like, and they were not in the red zone really at all yesterday or on Sunday. I feel like this has been a recurring issue as far as whenever they're in the red zone, someone is going to get called for a false start penalty. I get that you're excited. Oh my God, we may score a touchdown. Breathe. Relax. Don't put your team behind the sticks, which constantly happened in the game on Sunday and has happened at times this season. Now, it's not as bad as it was last year in Seattle when they had, was it 7? Which is just still absurd that even happened. But that was an issue. So that was really the setback, not taking care of the football, the pre-snap issues there with the false start penalties. That's what he was really upset about. Now, a lot of people, myself included, have brought up the fact that the Panthers have not necessarily been stubborn about running the football, which is what Dave Canales said they were going to be all throughout the offseason, which turns out that wasn't true, apparently. Now, there are some factors to why that's been the case, and he was asked on Monday, and he regrets about not running the football more, even though you really haven't run the football as much as we thought you were going to run the football this season after you spent all offseason telling us how much you're going to run the football and how stubborn you're going to be about running the football. He said, well, it's the turnovers and the score. That was part of the reason why he was able to run the ball that much, why he didn't call it many run plays, and I totally understand that. He understood it in the moment as well. And that they needed to be competitive, throw the ball. They had a lot of success previous weeks throwing the ball. So why not go out there and do it again? And he said he didn't have any regrets. But then a follow-up question was asked about the offensive line struggles. Panthers offensive line came into the game only giving up 22 sacks on the season, which was top 5 as far as least sacks allowed in the NFL in 2024 coming into the game on Sunday. They allowed 6. Why? Dave Canales said, opportunity. The Cowboys were allowed multiple opportunities, not multiple, but a lot of opportunities, more than regular, more than the average to go out there and to get after the passer that day. And they got in a rhythm. So Dave Canales, who said he doesn't regret not running the ball more, they want to throw it, be competitive, is also saying, well, the problem was with the offensive line struggles. Yes, some of their own issues, but also, well, the Cowboys could pin the ears back. If they can pin the ears back, why not try to run the ball a little bit? I don't know. Xavier Legette, he is dealing with another injury, and he is now listed as week to week. Had a groin injury pop up on him on Sunday, and Dave Canales said he should be out this Sunday against Arizona. He did mention that he would love to see him play again this season, but that calls into question why? For what? For who? Is there any point in doing this? So far this year, 41 receptions, 439 yards, 4 touchdowns. Certainly that should be a higher total. We all understand that. If it was 50 receptions and then 600 yards and probably like 6 touchdowns, you would feel really good about Legette heading into 2024. Now, a lot of you spent all last week saying he's a bust. Panthers got it wrong. How could they not draft Vlad McConkey, even though you didn't say a single thing like that back during the draft? He'll be fine. Not a number one. Don't think he's ever going to be, but I think he'll still be fine for Carolina, and it's probably the best thing for them moving forward, just to sit him and to not have him deal with any more of that. With the groin, he's got to have wrist surgery. It's going to be an offseason where he's rehabbing, and let's just go ahead and get to the rehab at this point in time, I think, and get him ready to go once team activities start back up in March. Jaycee Horn, who was dealing with groin, was able to play on Sunday, did not get the opportunity to shadow CeeDee Lamb. There's a lot of issues that people have with that, some consternation about a Jero scheme, and that has been something people have been bitching and moaning about all season long. And even last season, I don't even know if really last season people were complaining, but people are really complaining now and want them gone. Maybe you'll get your wish, but they need to get more talent. It's not going to matter if they don't get better players, but we'll see how that all pans out likely next month at the end of the season. But Jaycee Horn did not get an opportunity to shadow CeeDee Lamb. There was one drive where Jordan Fuller was lined up, by my count, at least 2 times on CeeDee Lamb where he got a reception. One of them was a touchdown, and you're wondering how on earth is that ever the case? And the Jero scheme does not necessarily ask a corner like Jaycee Horn, as good as he is, to travel with the team's top receiver. And you could agree with that or not, and I understand, because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why you'd rather have Jordan Fuller lined up against CeeDee Lamb than Jaycee Horn, but that's what the defense called for on Sunday. And Dave Canales, who was asked about that, said there's certainly things that we can do as far as trying to get JC lined up against a guy like CeeDee Lamb. And he also said it's a combination of a bunch of things. It's not just about the coverage. So the other things that go into what they're doing defensively that may keep JC on one side of the ball and away from the team's top receiver. I would just hope that they would consider making adjustments in the future, which I think may happen, maybe not. We'll see. Final question that he did get was about development versus wins. Sitting here at 3-11, what's more important? Getting some of the young guys out there to see who you can build with in the future, or actually trying to win some games, even though I know a lot of people are going to scream about, you're going to ruin your draft position. How dare you do this? He said, Dave did, that, quote, I think it's more important to set culture that every game is a championship opportunity. So they're going to try to win. Is it the best thing for them? Maybe from the perspective of they rarely win and they have no idea how to win. So that would be a good thing. And then no, from the perspective of they could get into the top 2 and use the Raiders or Giants or whatever quarterback hungry teams behind them as their sucker to get a ton of picks and help build towards the future. So not pretty good argument there. We'll see. Okay. On Tuesday, I review the keys of victory. On Friday, of course, I go over them, and we'll go over the keys of victory again as Panthers again fell 30-14 on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports' coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern, leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. then the Clemson Tigers looked to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the College Football Playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and on Max. Fridays throughout the season, I go over my 3 keys victory for the Panthers that upcoming Sunday. And then here on Tuesdays, we go back over those keys victory and see how the Panthers did. Of course, Panthers did not win, but sometimes when they don't win, it does not mean that they didn't hit on some of their keys. This is a Sunday where they did not hit on any of their keys. Key number 1 was to continue success on the ground. Chuba Hubbard came into the game 6th in the NFL in rushing yards, first time in his career going over 1,000 yards. He was 3rd in rushing success rate among backs, about at least 200 carries. The Cowboys were the 3rd worst rush defense in the NFL. So it seemed like a no-brainer that Carolina would be able to run on Dallas. Well, they only ran it 16 times for 60 yards. Chuba got 10 carries for 32 yards, and that has become all too familiar this season where Chuba Hubbard does not touch the ball nearly enough. And the Panthers put themselves in a situation where they're turning the ball over like they did on Sunday, or they're not converting on 3rd down. They're having penalties, things that have not allowed them to necessarily run the ball as much as we would all like to see and expect to see. And I suppose that's what played out on Sunday with the 4 turnovers. I will say this one thing, though, because Dave Canales is saying that you have the turnover right there at the beginning of the second half. You could have run the ball there. If you're a team that wants to be about physicality and running the football, you just got a gift before the half, which Cooper Rush fumbling, Bryce finding Jalen Coker on that blown coverage for 83 yards. It's a 10-7 game, brand new lease of life in that game. Why not then try to control the clock on the ground? Instead, to drop back, Damian Lewis gets beat immediately. Bryce Young fumbles. And that was basically it from there on. So that's just one of those things I wonder. And it's Monday morning quarterbacking, or I guess Tuesday morning quarterbacking at this point in time. And just the whole hindsight 2020, why not? I don't know. Number 2 was getting home. The Panthers, out of nowhere, went from having 12 sacks in the first 10 games of the season to 13 in the last 3 games heading into this game. And unfortunately, did not get a lot of pressure. Cooper Rush was sacked on that 3rd down to open up the game by Jaycee Horn. I think the second now career sack for JC, at least the second sack he's had this season. And that was a great blitz call by Jero Avero. Problem is we didn't see a lot of blitz calls the rest of the game. And that is really what had been changing recently defensively, that they were sitting a lot more pressure. And for whatever reason, with Cooper Rush back there, who threw for 3 touchdowns, they weren't really trying to do that. And I don't know, man. They're concerned about the run, which obviously was a problem. Gave it 211 yards on the ground. 3rd straight week, the Panthers giving up 200-plus rushing yards. I don't know, but did not get home, so failed that one. And the 3rd one was the finish. You had the fumble by Chuba 2 weeks ago. You had the drop by Legette last week. It was just, if you're in a situation to win the game, finish. And they weren't ever in a situation to win the game. So I can't really give them a bad mark there as far as the 3rd key finishing. So did not get home on Sunday outside that opening drive, and they did not continue the success on the ground because they didn't even, well, at least Dave, let's not say they, but Dave was not super committed to wanting to run football on Sunday. And there's a lot of things that happened that led to that, led to turnovers. So I kind of understand. Not kind of. I totally understand why they didn't run the ball as much as a lot of people would have liked to have seen. And I'm sure he would have liked to have seen on Sunday entering the game. It's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. Why? Because tomorrow's Wednesday, and on Wednesdays throughout the regular season, I'm right here answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. And all you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or X, right there on the screen for the YouTube listeners. And I'll answer your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. Then once the offseason's here, I'll answer your questions over on Fridays. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Wednesday.